At DDI, we turn data-driven insights into dynamic leadership development, unlocking potential, sparking growth, driving performance, because better leaders create a better future.
Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, The Leadership Gap in Your AI Strategy. A few housekeeping tips before we begin. You can find today's slides in the resources and handout section of your console. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive the link to watch on demand later today. The attendee chat feature is open, and we thank you for all of your comments and responses that we see coming in today. If you have any questions, please submit those through the Q&A box. We have a lot to cover today, so if we don't get to your question, we will follow up with a response. And now let's bring in today's presenters, Stephanie Neal, Director of DDI's CABR, and Kevin Tamanini, VP of DDI's Professional Services. Welcome in, Kevin and Stephanie, to get started on this super important topic.
Thanks, Kim. Greetings, everybody. Thank you for joining today. And given that this is our first webinar of 2026, Happy New Year to you. We are very eager to talk to you today about this topic. And thank you to those who have been chiming in on the chat about how you're feeling about AI. And as I've been reading through these, I see a lot of insights that you're sharing about how you are using AI and the impact that it's having on you as a thought partner and helping to think through problems and challenges. And the reason we're excited to you today is because we want to start to think about not just the impact that this has on you, but also the impact that your leaders are faced with within your organizations and how that rolls down to their teams. You know, judging just by the number of people that we have registered for this session, we have about 1,300 folks registered. This is clearly a hot topic for us to dive into. And so we're eager to share with you our point of view on what we see happening and where we see the biggest opportunity for all of you to take advantage of what may be in front of you right now. You know, as I step back and I think about, we've always talked about the pace of change and how that continues to increase. And if you're anything like me, it's always been difficult to wrap your head around how can that be different than what we're dealing with right now? Things feel like they're so fast as it is. And what I'd say is the number of conversations that we've been having with customers about AI have been increasing over the past 12 months in particular. The frequency and the velocity of those conversations that we've had around AI have had this steep upward trajectory. And even if I'd say coming back in the new year, the urgency around talking about AI with customers has increased. Although it started to pivot a little bit. It's moved a little bit away from just talking about AI to moving towards AI transformation. And I think that that's really the opportunity that's in front of us to talk about today. Unfortunately, what I would say is I think most of the conversations that we've been having over the last 6 to 12 months have been the wrong conversations. They've been talking about and focusing on AI tools. What's the latest AI agent? What's the latest bot that we need to be using? And a constant discussion around the implications of AI for the future of how we're going to work. Those are really important parts of the puzzle. But I think that it's really missing the one thing that matters the most. What is the critical aspect that we see is helping to enable long-term success of the use of AI within an organization? It's not just a technology innovation. It's about a cultural and a business transformation. And we see that leaders are the critical component. They're going to help to bring stability, clarity, and focus to where we are currently with this AI boom. And so because of that, that's why we'd like to share with you our point of view today. As Kim mentioned, my name is Kevin Tamanini. I'm the Vice President of our Professional Services team here at DDI. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Stephanie Neal, who is the Director of our CABR team, our Center for Analytics and Behavioral Research. Now, across both Stephanie and I, we each have nearly 2 decades of experience working directly with leaders who are trying to navigate change. And we see this as a leadership challenge, not just a technology initiative. If I do a quick pause and rewind the clock, just 6 short years ago, everyone's world came to a screeching halt when COVID hit. And we were forced to make immediate changes, mainly for survival purposes, in how to operate in a virtual environment. Yes, there were technology needs. There was infrastructure that came as part of that. But quickly, once those were solved, and dare I say, those were probably the easiest solutions to solve, the focus turned immediately towards how do we help people lead differently in a new world, in a new era? And that need was urgent. I think that we see the same sense of urgency around this need for an AI transformation. Yet, unfortunately, what we're seeing is a lot of HR and talent teams are missing the moment to take action now and equip leaders with the tools and the skills that they need, not just to use AI, but to drive their teams and their organization's transformation. So we're excited to share with you our point of view today on what we see as opportunities for you to really dive into this head first. But before we start, what I'd like to do is open up to a poll. So Kim's going to help us open up this poll for us to take a look at. For you, what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing within your organizations as you start to focus on AI? So as we get this launched, I'm going to ask you just to select the one that is the most top of mind for you as we get into this. As you're looking at this, are you focusing on technology, the implementation of the technology and the use of AI? Are you concerned that your leaders don't know how to lead through an AI transformation? Perhaps you're seeing that your leaders are unsure of what to do when making day-to-day decisions utilizing AI as a tool. Or finally, is your biggest concern around the team cohesion? I see that there's a number of you that are providing data so far. Keeps on coming in here. That's great. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. There's so many things around AI that are just multifaceted. And so it may be hard for you to look at this and say, yeah, but can I just pick more than one? We're gonna force you a little bit and just say, yeah, just for today's conversation, let's really try to focus in on that one that matters the most.
Yeah, and it looks like already we're seeing a clear kind of front runner here, though good still, massive view beyond that our leaders don't know how to lead through AI transformation. I think that's something we're hearing quite often. So absolutely makes sense.
Yeah. So why don't we go ahead and close the poll for now, given how much we have coming through, so that we can move forward with this. I think that very much aligns with a lot of what we've been hearing in the conversations that we've been having with customers. And let me share with you now, what are those things? As we've been diving into these conversations, most organizations that we have conversations with, and they start around AI, focusing on the technology challenge, tools, cost, level of spend, level of adoption. Sometimes there's enabled learning pathways for how to gain more skills and knowledge about AI tools and how to utilize them. But that's one key component. Next is oftentimes there's a focus on carefully designed principles around do's and don'ts on how to use AI, the risks associated with inappropriate use. Most times what organizations are realizing is that change can't happen on its own. And so this is where we've seen the formation of AI councils. We had our customer summit in November, just a couple months ago, and I had a conversation with many customers on this topic around the AI councils. And what they said is, yep, we know we got them. We know they're in place. We're not sure exactly who's on them. We're not sure exactly what we should be learning from them or how to get access. And so I think they're a necessary but also insufficient outlet for us to navigate this landscape around AI and what we should be helping people within the organization understand how to utilize differently. But finally, I think that a really critical piece is that the weight of all of this is really starting to build up for leaders. There's opportunity for sure, but there's also fear, there's ambiguity, and leaders are often left to fend for themselves in terms of helping their team navigate how to use this. In our most recent global leadership forecast, we found that frontline leaders reported that they had nearly 3 times more AI-related anxiety than executives. And that's interesting to me because I think it points to this fundamental disconnect or mismatch between the enterprise decisions that are being made on, we have to use AI, let's roll it out. And then the boots on the ground and the leaders that are working with their teams to simply make it happen, make it work. The reality is that there's new pressures coming in, and these are moving even faster real time that people are having a challenge to keep up with. And so sometimes you can't even move fast enough without creating new fires on their own. And that's for us where we see that there's a shift in terms of traditional leadership models and how individuals need to think about, what should I be doing to help enable my team, let alone myself, and how do I use AI, and what does this mean for me? And so when we think about this idea, this notion of traditional leadership, this trend is only going to continue to get stronger because what's changing under the surface really mirrors the shift in organizations designing for jobs and moving more towards an increasing need to solve for capabilities. Rising burnout, Cognitive overload are real challenges. A move and a shift towards horizontal leadership creates different dynamics. Greater need for adaptability and judgment, but also this ongoing demand for experimentation across the organization. Interestingly, in a recent study that McKinsey put out, they reported that 80% of organizations that were using generative AI were not able to show a meaningful bottom line impact. Yikes. That return on investment has to be coming through in order for us to sustain this and see the impact that we're talking about. In a similar study that MIT put out earlier in the fall, they said 95% of AI pilots were failing. And when they dug into the data, what they found was the reason behind the failure was because of a lack of leadership capability to drive transformation. They were focusing on static tool utilization, not a transformation of the business. Tools are important and are an essential component of this, but the mindset that leaders embrace and organizations embrace around what do we need to drive differently and what do leaders need in order to support that, that's the differentiator for us. We need to start to embrace this idea, stop thinking about AI as a single capability and start seeing it as an integrated ecosystem. One in which we know that there needs to be AI acumen and AI governance. Just like we talked about that transition to COVID. People needed computers. They needed access to online portals like Teams or WebEx or Zoom. And there's governance. We needed to tell people, don't show up on company calls in your pajamas and make sure your background is blurry. But once we get through those are table stakes. What really becomes most important is how do people lead in that environment? And so for us, leadership in an AI era is what we are seeing as that unrecognized issue that we got to dive into. We need to understand this is where the urgency is. And what we're seeing is opportunities being missed along the way. So what if we could tell you that we see the opportunity for you to help build leaders on specific skills in this AI leadership space? That's where I'm going to transition it over to Stephanie to share with you about our framework and the things that we see as being the most critical in this leadership arena. Steph?
Thanks, Kevin. And I was just queuing this up. I think that was such a perfect tee up for what we're going to dive into and really setting the context of why leadership capabilities are coming out to be so much more important right now, and I think often overlooked. And looking across, thinking about the pace that feels relentless, how many teams are really already feeling stretched thin, how much information, how little time they're able to operate in. We know it often feels like a scramble with the amount of uncertainty there is around AI. So if teams are going to respond to AI-driven change with calm, with focus, rather than panic and burnout, which of course is what we want, we know that's not a problem for the technology, but really that's going to be a leadership capability problem. And our research points to 5 leadership capabilities that we call the 5 C's of leadership in the AI era. So you can see that here. Briefly, I'll just touch on these, that the 5 capabilities start with connection, which is building trust and transparency so that teams understand where AI fits in and where human judgment is still really needed and maybe even more essential. Conscience, which is even more important in an AI era, is about guiding ethical, values-based decisions when there might be pressure to create some trade-offs that might otherwise lead to poor judgment or poor decisions, as well as conscience, I already went over. Clarity, which as AI increases complexity and the amount of information flow, we know that effective leaders must really cut through that noise. They need to have that kind of resetting and communication of priorities that's going to help their teams get the focus they need and help them get through the uncertainty. And then leaders we know won't have all the answers. That's where curiosity comes in, with that willingness to keep learning, to ask better questions, and to just adapt as AI capabilities evolve as well. And that's something leaders are going to have to do more and more. And then finally, creativity is one that's often overlooked, I think, in the context of AI, because we expect that, we're going to be driving with new insights. But this is really where we know leaders can only benefit from those AI-generated insights and solutions if they drive meaningful action with their teams and across their organizations. And this means rethinking how work gets done, delegating effectively, and enabling better outcomes, not just faster ones, even though we're all trying to keep up and keep things going at speed. So Together, these 5 Cs really define what effective leaders must do in an AI era. But yet, what we're seeing in our research is that it's a significant gap for many leaders across all 5 of these areas. And you can see in the call out here that 2 out of 3 leaders say that their managers are not effectively using these behaviors today. That was in a recent Pulse survey following up on our global leadership forecast that Kevin mentioned earlier. And that means, of course, that about only one third of managers are effective across the 5 Cs. So, of course, the risk becomes when these behaviors aren't present, not only will AI fall short, it can also amplify existing leadership gaps. So, just to dive into this a little bit, and I know Kevin's going to speak a little bit more specifically in the context of the 5 Cs, we can see that there's a real risk of not succeeding with AI, and especially when leadership capability doesn't keep pace, that AI tends to magnify what's already there. And we see this showing up in a lot of ways at different workplaces, but it's often stress, confusion, misalignment, and that resulting impact across organizations becomes rising anxiety and burnout, talent and capability drain, stalled or failed transformation, and leaders racing ahead without kind of a common shared direction, which can lead to all of those issues kind of all over again in loop. These risks don't come from AI moving too fast. They come from leadership capability not keeping up and helping to keep that focus. And that's where Kevin's going to take us next, just bringing this to life a bit more through the lens of the 5 Cs. Kevin, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Steph. And I think that, as we talk about these 5 Cs, right now, this is a framework and a recommendation on the areas that we see as having the most impact for leaders as they're stepping into driving transformation. Transformation is not a new concept, but the lens and the atmosphere around AI is very new. And so it's not just about simply taking the same skills that a leader may have needed to drive change previously and applying them in a new context. Yes, that's part of it. But this helps to create a little bit of a different framework for us to be able to take action on. So if what we're saying here is that AI leadership is indeed what holds an AI strategy together, because it's focusing on transformation, not just tool utilization and adoption. It's also where we see cracks can show first. We truly believe that if we underappreciate this, that we're going to get stalls in our programs, just like MIT was able to show in their study. So hopefully this 5C model is resonating with you. But you might also be asking, so where would we start? Are all of these equal? Do we feel that there's equal components for each of these as you step into your AI transformation? So let's talk about each. And in particular, what would happen if each of these or one of these areas was not a key focus as leaders worked on enabling their teams to leverage AI differently? So let's start with connection. What would happen if leaders aren't able to build genuine connection and psychological safety across their teams using AI elements? Well, fear, resistance to change, misalignment, both to goals as well as other teams. Fundamentally, what we know is leadership is all about navigating human complexity, and leaders are the core responsibility of that. And so if leaders aren't able to establish this connection point first, everything else is going to be even more challenging on the back end. So not just trust within the tools, but trust within the leaders to help enable people to be successful. Hearing popular press talk about how organizations are not going to be hiring or they're going to be cost cutting because they need to rely on AI can be a scary proposition. And so leaders need to be able to help demystify a lot of things relative to the use of AI within the organization. Second, if we talk about conscience, what happens when leaders don't apply ethical judgment and accountability? Well, I saw some of you talk about this in the comments that you were sharing. Phrases like work slop, customer impact, both internal and external customers, reputation implications are really at play here if leaders aren't able to demonstrate increased capability in this area. I mean, listen, AI might sound like an ideal work partner for many individuals. It's amiable, it's consistent, it's endlessly agreeable, it generates really solid outputs, often tells you your ideas are great, and never really has an off day. I mean, I just had a conversation over the weekend with Copilot about something I was doing on my home project, and it was a great interaction. It made me feel like I had good esteem in terms of what I was going to be doing next. But within an organization, expectations are high. capability needs to be even higher. And there needs to still be an assurance that base level capability is part of the equation. AI is a tool. It's not an answer to solving things if people don't have a fundamental understanding of how to do their work. Let's talk about creativity. What happens when leaders fail to translate human and AI insights into new ideas? Well, what we're going to see is AI transformation won't come automatically. Systems are going to have to be rebuilt. Leaders must be developed, and they need to understand where can there be missteps along the way. The potential, as we've talked about, is really high. But associates that are using AI are going to need to have that support, permission to experiment, psychological safety to step out of their comfort zones until there's new behaviors that feel more natural to engage in. So it's if this is not embraced, then AI is only going to be seen as a cost-cutting tool. Experimentation is only going to be seen as slowing things down and bottlenecks put in place. So leaders need to be able to embrace this and demonstrate this capability really, really well. In terms of clarity, what happens when leaders can't make sense of complex information or even communicate clear direction? Different data, different contexts, need for focus and clarity becomes an issue. Again, listen, AI leadership challenges are not all equal. Frontline manager reality is not the same as a vice president's. So focusing on generic AI skills at training doesn't give the distinction that we need. So just as leadership responsibilities shift across level, we can't take a one-size-fits-all approach to dealing with this from a leadership context. Finally, curiosity. What happens when leaders lack curiosity and adaptability? Fundamentally, it comes down to AI demands something different than we did in the past. Where trust alone may have been the key, today it also requires a willingness to embrace risk. Understanding the ability to create an environment where risk is allowed and even seen as productive. We can't cling to outdated methods. We have to enable this culture so that fear does not come into play and staggers our progress as we go through. So these are the implications from both an individual, a team, and Stephanie shared a business perspective. If you as an organization, you as talent professionals aren't able to help your leaders develop these skills to truly drive this AI transformation. I'm going to transition it back over to Steph to talk about kind of what are those implications next as we take a step back from this and how you can then take action within your organizations.
Yeah, thanks again, Kevin. And earlier we talked about how AI is really a leadership stress test. You saw this spring or kind of a similar spring. And what's important to recognize is that these same conditions that we talked about with how it's stressing and testing leadership, speed, pressure, and uncertainty can also build resilience if leaders are supported the right way. So we know leaders don't need more noise. They need development aligned to real business priorities. They need clear feedback on where they're strong and where they need to stretch, and personalized insight that helps them to focus their limited time where it matters the most, especially now. And at an individual level, that means targeted development around the 5 C's. At a group level, it might mean accelerating the leader's best position to drive AI results effectively, depending on your context. And for HR, that means having guidance and practical tools to stay ahead of what AI is changing. So our goal is really simple. We're here to be by your side to help solve the leadership capability gap, to support leaders to kind of help keep that calm that I think everyone needs, providing focus, reducing friction, and preventing burnout so that teams can sustain the momentum and succeed through this transformation. And just to help us kind of all align again, we wanted to launch another poll to you to get more of an understanding of what you're facing right now. We'd love to hear from you. What feels most urgent for your team at this moment? And I think Kim's going to be launching that poll out to you as well. So please go ahead and select the option that best fits. And let's see if we've got any responses starting to come in here. I'm just not seeing results quite yet. So please go ahead and select which one of these do you feel you most immediately need or your teams most immediately need. And if you don't see one that's here that's relevant, or if you feel like there's something missing, please select other and type into chat here so we can all see what others are kind of coming up against, what will be most helpful right now. And there's some results coming through. Hopefully you can all see this too. that, yes, guidance on AI best practices and leadership implications. I see the majority of you are picking that, and I would say that's for all of the teams and companies we're working with. That's very much something that's coming up, I think, for everyone, which is why obviously Gen AI tools have become amazing coaches. I know people are seeking that kind of guidance as well. And it looks like that one really is dominating. So some interesting results, Kevin. Curious what you're seeing here too.
Yeah, I think it's a really important call out, and I think that aligns with the framework that we've talked about. I think the speed with which some of this stuff shifts for you and within the organization is also very quick. And so what we want to be able to do is be responsive with you as things continue to shift. How can we help give you some tools to target these directly? We have tools within DDI that help to target those leadership behaviors directly, can help give you an evaluation of where do people stand relative to those skills, and then what can you do to help close any gaps that they may have real time as they're facing these challenges on the front lines.
Yep, definitely. And it's something we're all going to continue to learn together as we go along. So we're definitely here to continue to support. And do want to share that in the light of that too, we're going to continue to offer content on this topic, and we hope that you can join us next month, February 25th, for the next webinar in this series. Change ready leaders don't happen by accident, which is really could, I think, help us lean into what we know leaders need more of right now, and hopefully provide you some spark for what can help you bring back into your organizations as well. I think we still have a couple of minutes, so I'm curious, Kevin, did you see if any questions had come in for us yet? Because we're happy to take a couple minutes if there were, or keep sharing in chat as well. You know, what you're seeing. I know even hearing from each other is such a valuable thing right now too.
Yeah, I think the essence of this is what we wanted to share with you was this framework that we saw as the biggest gap, and basically trying to do a call to action to you to say, if you haven't been focusing on the leadership capabilities, now is the time to do it, not waiting until something else has been set up within the organization. And so as you have additional needs that are popping up in this space, a lot of your commentary in the chat resonates a lot with me, that this is not new to change. And as this next webinar coming up in February illustrates, but a lot of it in terms of the context is, and the pace, the velocity, and the urgency that organizations and stakeholders are wanting to see a return on their AI investment is real and is creating pressure. So we're here to help you through it. And wherever you see that you have the biggest challenges in thinking through how to do that, that's what we'd like to talk to you about.
Absolutely. Yeah, and keep sharing in chat. I think we're going to wrap up because it was just a couple of questions I think we can respond to via chat later as well. Until then, thank you, everyone. We hope to see you soon, and we look forward to continuing this discussion with you and leaning in on this topic together. And thanks, Kevin, for co-presenting.
Thanks all.
Have a great day.